Okay, I think I'll get started. Thank you very much for that, Sobika. Thank you for helping me with the presentation here. So we do have, I think, few people already on the line. So let's get started. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, all of you, for joining in the session today. I know it's early in the morning, quite some time to take out from your busy schedule to join us today. But thanks for all of you, to all of you for making it. So quickly, I'll just be running through, the presentations today alongside my colleague, Mr. Renju Varghese and Dr. Anjan Krishnamurthy. So I'll start with a quick introduction of myself for everyone's understanding. So my name is Shuma, and I am the business consultant here at CISA for UK and Europe. I'll be hosting the session today alongside my colleagues, Mr. Renju Varghese and Dr. Anjan Krishnamurthy. So before we begin, and I hand it over to my counterparts here, I just want to give a brief context on what we'll be discussing today around, the webinar, and also what you'd be expecting in the next hour of your time that you're here today. So you might be seeing here on the presentation slide as we have the EU AI Act, right? So today's topic focuses on a highly relevant topic, which is the EU AI Act, across, I think, organizations and individuals in this part of our world. Alongside my colleagues today, we will be trying to decode the whole EU AI Act, help you all understand, how to navigate AI governance as part of the Act across the region. Having said that, we will be covering domains in the EU AI Act, right from, of course, the regulations, the framework, and the most important being the implementation roadmap, which is key, I think, for organizations in the region to keep you AI audit ready. So that's, a gist of the topic of today's webinar. We're excited to begin this. We have a huge, concise presentation for all of you today. And followed by that, we will be having a Q&A round at the end of the webinar. So I'd be requesting all of you to feel free to put in your, your questions on the chat, and we'll make sure to address all the questions at the end of the webinar. So before I do that, I would just allow me a few minutes to run through, a background of CISA for, for any of you who would not know us by it for now. So we are a leading global cybersecurity organization. We go way back to almost 18 years plus existence in the industry. And we have more than 2,000 clients, and we have serviced around 40 plus countries worldwide. That's just a little background of where, our humble beginnings to where we are today. And of course, being recognized as a global PFI, as you would see on the right-hand side of the presentation, is another feather in our hat. This being inculcated in almost all our service solutions that we offer. So speaking of solutions, the next topic covers the portfolio that we have that CISA engages in the industry. We have quite a stack of solutions here, ranging from compliance, your whole suite of compliance requirements, to your testing requirements, to your data protection, to your training and certifications. Again, a number that I missed to mention. We have globally trained more than 15,000 professionals as well in quite a lot of our certification programs. Then we also have our leading tech security unit, which I think we are lucky enough to have our colleagues, Mr. Renju and Mr. Anjan, who are leading the leading tech security unit. So I would not be delving, while I would love to, but I would not be delving into each of these topics because they're quite many. So I would request if any of you have any questions pertaining to these service solutions that we have here, you can please reach out to me. I would be happy to, arrange a call or discuss any requirement or any subject of interest that you might have. So we'll move on to the next topic. I think here we are. So joining us today are our expert speakers who will be leading the discussion. We have Mr. Renju Varghese. Mr. Renju Varghese is our Vice President of Leading Tech Security. He has more than 18 plus years experience in the field. And as a vice president, I have myself personally worked with Renju, many years. So I know he has been instrumental in launching a lot of our innovative security practices, especially in hardware security and artificial intelligence in CISA. And he's also author. I don't know if a few of our customers, we also published the CISA Top 5 Forensic Report, and Mr. Renju Varghese is the official author of the report as well. So we are definitely in good hands today. So joining him, we also have Dr. Anjan Krishnamurthy, again with over 18 years of experience in the industry. He also has a PhD in computer science and engineering, and he specializes in very interesting topics that we talk about in the industry these days: cryptology, cyber forensics. So you can put in all your questions that you have in these domains to him today. And a very interesting, I think, what can we say? And a very interesting uh, thing about Ms. Dr. Anjan is also that he has over 75 publications in reputed journals and conferences that he has worked on throughout his experience in the industry. So I think that sums up our introduction for today's speakers. I would let Dr. Anjan take it from here. So everyone, again, a request, please feel free to put in your questions on the chat. We will make sure to address all of these by the end of the chat, and I'll come back by that time. Dr. Anjan, over to you.
Thanks, Shuma. Thanks for the nice introduction. So let me quickly share my presentation. Right. So as a brief background has been given from about what we are trying to talk about today's discussion, which is basically on the UAI Act. And we know that the legislation has come and the regulation has been enacted upon in the way back in 2024. And it has always been a vision to look at the AI governance from a very long time. So the perception from a large set of organizations would have just been to have AI governance as a voluntary basis. Those who are looking out for AI or a AI intensive kind of an organization having to voluntarily go for an AI governance and standardize it with the GRC framework. But those days are gone. So it's the time where you're looking at AI governance from a mandatory viewpoint. And that is where the one of the world's first enacted act on the AI part was enacted by the EU Parliament. And that's how the obligations to the high risk AI system started with the compliance and demanding an assurance, the technical documentation. And we have seen the categories of the risk applications, which were basically categorized by the EU Act since the time it was incepted in 2024. And there are lots to it, and there are lots to extend from the EUA Act as well, where UK also started doing a approach which is completely on the accountability basis. Because today, when you talk about the AI part of it and the governance part of it, the most important question is who is accountable. And that exact question is where the baseline started with the EU and the UK part, where we are talking about how systems can be basically secured and not documented. So whenever we talk about any act, regulations, or anything of that sort, it's not just the policies or the documents which talks about a legal regulation part. It's rather a technical implementation of the entire governance, which becomes a very important and a crucial center point of the entire process in the AI ecosystem itself in the organization. And that too with the EUA Act, which is very centered on the privacy of the EU citizens, it becomes rather very important to understand the why risk applications have to be audited and have to be brought under the ambit of the EUA Act. So with that point, let's quickly look at the numbers. The numbers talks a lot in terms of what we are trying to do with AI, because AI is moving at a lightning speed today, and there is a lot of adoptions. There is a lot of phase shifting within the AI, which is basically happening. And with the recent last month's breaches, which we have looked at, there are multiple different attacks which are happening and the breaches which are basically happening through the AI. So you don't need a human to do the breaches today. You need an AI agent to do a breach today. So that's a way in which things have changed. And the numbers which are basically published from multiple sites, where Anthropic and Ventura Beat survey has put up its own set of numbers and the projections in terms of how AI is changing the entire attack surface, the attack success rates, and multiple safeguards are basically changing, and how many enterprises are getting exposed. In fact, MCP is also coming up with its own inherent architectural threat, and that's also one of the lead attack surface which is changing the entire play with agentic AI and several other aspects of it. So the numbers keeps changing, the numbers keeps talking multiple things, but the insight is something which is very crucial. That is what we need to learn from these numbers are nothing but the way we have to start our journey with the AI security and the governance. And that is a baseline thought what we need to do, whether we are talking about EU AI Act or any kind of a GRC framework for involving AI. So what is EU AI Act? So the EU AI Act was the very first comprehensive binding AI regulations which was adopted and enacted in 2024, which was a phased enforcement from 2024 till 2027, with a specific and a very clear deadlines being provided for each of these activity. And the major four sections which you can categorically look at in the EUA Act are the extraterritorial scope, the risk-based approaches, the phased timelines, which are very crucial in looking at these applications, and then the penalties, which if it is not being looked at, if there is no compliance for certain segment of the applications which are under the risk-based approach. So when you look at the extraterritorial scope, it is the point that it's not just in the EU region where this EUA Act becomes specifically very important. It is also for those providers who are providing services to EU citizens or the EU region. They also need to be compliant about it. Whether it is deployers, providers, importers, whatever is the name that you call them, they have to be in line with the EUA Act. That is the extraterritorial scope, what it basically looks at. And obviously, when the act was in the draft stage, and there were several policies which were basically looked at. So one of the major thing which the EUA Act came up with was the risk-based approaches, where the entire segment of AI applications were categorized into several different risk tiers, starting from unacceptable, which was banned way back in February of 2025. And then the further categories of high risk applications, the limited risk, the minimal risk, and so on, which basically are the levels of the risk which have been basically mentioned in the risk-based approach. And obviously, the timelines have been very well seen, looked at it, and it is very clear in the act as well, and how it has basically been provisioned, and how the high risk AI applications have to go for a compliance by August of 2026, with a further extension in some of these cases up till August of 2027. So the penalty is something which was another specific mention as a part of the act, which was talking about how if the non-compliance applications comes into issue, what are the cases of penalty which is looked at in these particular cases. And they are a very whooping cost of around 7% of the global turnover of that particular firm if there is a non-compliance to it. So this is a part of the entire act itself. So when you look at the entire high risk system, this is a place, or this is one of the tiers in the risk-based approach, which basically requires you to look at the entire segment of how do you demonstrate the compliance for it. And that is where the EUA Act, looking at the high risk AI obligations, provided the six major control categories, which may have to have an evidence through its documentation and how it is to be monitored and trained at the later stage. So these six important controls are again mapped onto the articles, which is basically mentioned in the part of the EU Act, which are basically the data governance, the risk management, the technical documentation, the record keeping and logging part of it, transparencies and oversight, accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity. So this also basically links to another act, which is called as the Cyber Resilience Act of the EU, where certain segments basically overlap with that particular point. But this is very specifically for the EU citizens looking at the privacy factors of it. So when you move further into the entire snapshot of the article level obligations and the six important controls which we are talking about, the risk classifications which comes under the full weight conformity of the heavyweight applications, that is where it needs to be looked at. There are categorically several applications which are basically mentioned as a part of this particular high risk applications, and that is basically where we need to look out for the compliance part of it. And there is a very detailed conformity assessment steps which are basically being looked at, which are both technical and as well as policy driven. where there is a testing evidence which is also associated with these kind of applications. So the subject of the compliance is the high risk applications that we are looking at, specifically that particular tier of applications. And obviously, whenever you look at any kind of AI applications, you need to know what are their AI vulnerabilities. And that's where adversarial testing of these entire applications, which may result in looking at the entire vulnerability map of the application, also becomes a part of this system. And since it's a continual based risk management system, you need to do this as an iterative process to look at the AI system lifecycle and understand how the risk may get mitigated, or there may be a evaluation of certain risks which can go from the low risk to a high risk cases. And for those applications which are already on the deployment phase and in the post-marketing phase, it also becomes important to look out for how do you continuously monitor them, because there are drifts that is basically needs to be detected. There may be incidents which may basically happen. Several segments like the emerging risks, the breaches which we have been talking about. So several such kind of analysis and the monitoring part becomes a part of the entire process. And obviously, the entire act always emphasizes on the human in the loop. The human oversight is very important for the training part, because this is the segment where we are looking at AI is not reached to the level of an AGI or a super AI. And that's where we need to look at the human oversight to ensure that there is someone in the entire root process of it. And also look at how this entire human oversight always be a part of this entire thing, because the AI literacy is also a very important component of the entire article of the EU Act. So certain broader landscape have been evolved across with the use outcome driven accountability a part of it, which is less prescriptive than the EUA Act, but has four clear expectations that are basically being laid out. And these clear expectations are five clear expectations are very clearly mentioned. What is the security? What is the transparency and explainability of these AI applications? Fairness and non-discrimination of it, accountability and governance, contestability and the redress part of it. So these are certain extensions or demonstrable aspect of for a regulated industry or a regulated segment, which was a broader scheme and a theme which was basically prepared from the UK. Looking at the entire evidence aspect of it, what becomes very important for an audit ready conditions is not keeping the documentation alone. So many of the times we have a policy saying that I've got the policy documents ready and I'm also audit ready for it. So that's not the case. So the case is always that the technical controls needs to be implemented, and only then you are audit ready for it. It's not getting some PDF documents or having some policies which is not true to the sense, or it's not in the true spirit, and having some kind of a self-compliant report or a checklist or a self-assessment kind of a thing. So all these audit readiness comes from the technical controls and the technical implementation of the entire AI governance. And that's where we have to look at multiple adversarial tests, quantified breakage rate of the entire application, hardening and the logging of the entire AI application, continuous runtime monitoring of it, recording it, alerting it, just like what we do in case of SOC, and also look at token level captures for AI decision replay, and model level snapshots at several other cases to look at the integrity verification, and several more onto it, which are very, very specific to the kind of applications that we are looking at. But these are some of the generic things that we are looking at as a technical control to be audit ready for a particular organization or an application. So with this, I would hand it over to Ranju to take it up from this particular point.
Sure. Thanks, Anjan. So when we go to most of our clients, right, and ask, okay, are you audit ready? So these are the initial four set of questions which most of the organizations can't answer. First question is that, hey, can I have the complete AI inventory of your systems, which shows that including shadow AI, any third-party AIs, any set of agents that you have deployed, which LLM is your applications talking to. And the second one is that have you really tested those AI systems, right? Because most of the clients could have only done just a web application penetration test and state that, hey, we have covered all those AI components, right? And we have tested it. But unfortunately, in the world of AI, the AI test cases and the traditional test case that we have in our cyber is totally different. Third one is that can you show me or can you replay why the AI took a decision? This becomes very important when you have a autonomous AI or an AI which takes the decision part of it, right? So because AI is a black box and you are in, you don't know, right, what or why that particular AI took that particular decision. So you need to, as per the UAA Act, you should be able to replay that particular decision back to the auditors. And last one is that how about a continuous monitoring, right? Show me what all incidents, what all requests has been processed by your AI systems in the last few days. Why? Because these are the four foundational controls, so foundational technical controls, if implemented, can actually help you in your UAI readiness much, much faster and can help you in your UAI audit readiness as well. So let's dive deep, right? So what is the minimal technical controls which is required? First one is discover, right? Or identify your entire AI attack surface. So we have something called as the AI bill of materials, similar to software bill of materials. So as per the UAI Act, which is Article 11, technical documentation, you need to have a complete details of this AI bomb, which includes what models has been deployed, what all agents have you deployed in environment, do you have any MCP servers connected, does the agents connect to any tools, what's the APIs, and any machine learning models also you have deployed. So unless without this particular technical documentation, you don't know what you are trying to protect, right? The second one is testing, right? So the Article 15 talks about the adversarial robustness part of it. So the testing is just not running a standard set of test case on your AI systems. It's basically a data flow driven risk scenarios and testing those risk scenarios to see whether those risk scenarios are able to break your AI systems, right? If you just run the NVIDIA Garak kind of a tools, it just does a standard testing, right? Just send a standard test case and see whether LMEs can be broken or not. But in the actual production deployments, the test case differs drastically, or how the application interacts with an agent or an LLM differs, and according to that, the testing needs to be done. So once the testing has been done, you identify the vulnerabilities. The next one is how do you harden? How do you deploy the controls? So which Article 9 also talks about the risk treatment, right? Because from the risk scenarios that you identified in the test, you can see how to uh, reduce those particular risk. Now the controls to be deployed, which may include just a basic input filtering. So if you only have a chatbot, you can just do a basic set of input filtering, which can do a lot of protection. But if you have much more deep, in-depth AI systems, then you need to have a LLM guardrail. And if you have a small LM, which is been deployed in an IoT device or it is separately out, and where you cannot deploy a LLM guardrail kind of a thing, then you may need to do a secure fine tuning of those particular models. And if you're taking any models from the open source, there are a lot of instances where the ML models may contain a backdoors. So when you run those models in your environment and those backdoors gets executed, so you need to also scan those models to ensure that hey, those models doesn't contain any backdoors part. And last one is monitor. So in the world of AI, it's different from the world of cyber for monitoring. In cyber, we can just monitor your logs, because your logs captures everything. But in the world of AI, you can't just monitor the logs because the logs won't capture everything. You need to do a token level capture and then monitor at the token level. So your normal SIEMs and other solutions will not be sufficient enough to do a AI observability or monitoring part, because in world of AI, you need to monitor the tokens and not just the logs. And when you need to monitor if there is any attack which is happening and if there is any drift which is happening from the model part. So coming in detail, right? So let's go a little more detail from a architecture aspect. So we just have a quick uh, uh, sort of a small replica of how these particular controls can be deployed, right? So we have the user, we have the application, and applications connect to a database, and then applications connect to an AI system. So for a quick reference, we just put an LLM. That LLM can be an agent, uh, can ML model, can be anything, right? And if it's an agent, then that agent might be connected to a MCP, which can query your database. It can have a connected to a RAG system, which is nothing but like a vector database for analyzing a data. It also can be connected to other tools for web search or any other aspects. So from this kind of a typical deployment, how these controls gets applied. One is that for the application level, you need to do an AI inventory. So this AI inventory discover search is done at the application level so that we get to know how that particular application is interacting with various models, how many agents are there, what's the tools is there. So all those details we can able to capture at the AI inventory level. Then once we have those calls created or the inventory done, then we have to do a GenAI application pen testing. So here, one of the point to note here is that when you do GenAI application pen testing, you have to do the testing for all the calls which has been made by the application to your LLM, right? Because in normal applications, which has an AI systems integrated, there might be more than 7 to 14 set of calls which has been made. So you need to ensure that all the calls has been tested, because it's not a standard one, because every call will have a different risk scenario which can be exploited. Then once you've been tested, you can have the LLM firewall, or what we call as the set of controls. So LLM firewall, LLM guardrail can be deployed, which can stop these kind of attacks. And if you are deploying a open source models, then there is an other solution of deploying a securing the model itself, called secure fine tuning of the model. So in case if you don't want to go and invest in LLM firewall, you can do the secure fine tuning of the open source models. If you're using an open proprietary AI systems, then you can directly use an LLM guardrail part. And all those details needs to be monitored. So the monitoring, the token level capture happens at the application level, right? So every calls which is being made to an agent or an LLM, that calls needs to be integrated with a SDK, and we need to capture that particular token levels. So that's the reason why the AI inventory becomes very important, because unless we are able to have that complete inventory, we don't know whether we have tested all these calls, and whether we are able to capture all these all the calls from an observability aspect. And altogether, we can have the AI governance framework, which is either the UAI Act or ISO 42001 part. And more importantly, as per the UAI Act, you need to educate and certify all the team members who are interacting with your AI system. So whether it is from your cybersecurity team members or any other users. So as per the UAI Act, you need to train according to their particular role on how to use that particular AI systems part. Yeah. So one of the questions we'll be asking is that what details do you want in a discover aspect? So in the AI bomb, it's just not identifying what models been used. It's also able to identify uh, what agents been used, what tools has been used, And within a particular tools, if there is any MCP servers being connected towards to, right? Because that's the most critical information part. And you also need to know what all libraries are being used. So the last month itself, there has been a uh, lot of new vulnerabilities being identified at library level, whether it is the LangChain vulnerabilities or the PyTorch vulnerabilities. There's a lot of zero-day vulnerabilities which is being identified. So unless you know what libraries is powering your AI systems, we don't know whether that libraries are going to have an open source vulnerability or not. And that's can happen at any point of time. Then from a uh, next slide, Ranjit. From the red teaming aspect of testing the application, it's just not, it's very important to identify the risk scenarios part. So when you do an AI testing, it's the most important aspect is just not do a general set of test case, which is like the OWASP test case and everything, which definitely can identify a set of vulnerabilities. But the most important one is you need to identify your DFD, which is your data flow diagrams, or how your application interacts with your AI systems. Once you know that particular interactions, identify the risk scenarios on how that particular interactions can be compromised, right? Because you may have just a chatbot which may just give you the customer details. So that risk scenario is very limited. Is where, okay, how can I exploit uh, or try to manipulate the LLM and retrieve more customer details from the chatbot? Or you may have a KYC acceptance or review documentations, which will decide on whether to process a loan or something like that. So in the second scenario, the KYC documents will be uploaded can have these injection attacks, which we call as the indirect prompt injections, which can allow a transaction to process or allow a decision to be made, right? So when you define your uh, when you do testing for your AI applications, it's very important to identify your risk scenarios on how that particular AI interactions can be broken or manipulated to achieve some result. And then test that particular risk scenarios to confirm that your AI systems is clear. And those risk scenarios then can also directly go and sit it in your risk register as well. Then is the protection. So we just mentioned the base 4 protections which you can definitely deploy. First one is the input filtering, which can deploy at your application side, like your rate limiting, limiting the number of tokens and characters, limiting the special characters. So this filtering, basic filtering, which happens at application level, can actually prevent a lot of AI-based attacks. Second one, if just filtering doesn't suffice, you need to ensure that you you have an LLM firewall or a guardrail, because end of the day, in LLM or AI systems, it's about not sending the special characters and putting the payload. It's basically changing the conversation or putting the context in such a manner that you are able to manipulate the LLM to respond maliciously. So it's just not important that you just have those filtering in place. It's very important to ensure that there is a guardrail or a firewall so that anything which passes particular filtering can be protected. Third one, in case if you cannot deploy LLM firewall or guardrail, and if you're using an open source LLM for any specific activity, like an SLM for just one activity, you don't need to invest in an LLM guardrail or firewall. In that case, you can do a secure fine tuning of those open source LLM, so it gets taken care. Fourth one is the backdoor scanning. So in case if your any machine learning models or LLMs is been directly downloaded from the open source part, you need to test whether there are any backdoors which is hidden in those particular models. So a backdoor scanning of those ML models is very, very important. Any kind of a pickle files, any kind of a annoying calls in this particular pickle files and everything needs to be scanned part. So this will give you the base foundation set of controls from which you can secure your entire AI systems part. The next one is, once you harden, is the monitor part. So again, when we mentioned about monitor, it's about token level capture, because in the world of cyber, we are capturing the logs, while the world of AI, just capturing the logs will not give you that particular intel. We can just only able to capture what request has been sent in and what response the AI system was sent out, but we will not know why that particular AI system took that particular decision, right? So those things has to be only captured at the token level. But that's where this is one of the biggest difference from a cyber monitoring to an AI observability monitoring part. And when you monitor, you just monitor for the performance. You monitor for if there is any security attacks which is happening part. And the most important, you monitor if there is any drift, right? When you say drift, is the uh, because when you go deploy an AI into production, you expect a set of activity to happen, right? The user to input a set of activity in this set of formats. Is there a drift in the input? We'll get to know if the LLM or the AI is giving a different output. Is there a drift in that particular output, right? Why this drift is important? Because AI is not deterministic model. It's a non-deterministic model. If you're used, definitely you're used any chat GPT or a cloud, you know that for the same request that you sent, you definitely get a different response. The wordings will change, right? So accordingly, we need to ensure that whichever models, whichever process that you deployed, there is no drift from that signed off process. This also becomes very important because you can, using this particular AI observability, you can showcase your AI explainability, showing that how your AI systems was able to, or explain why that AI took that particular decision. So AI explainability can be shown. You can also show from a perspective that, okay, this is the flow which we have signed off. And if the from a drift, you can say if that flow has changed, or the AI systems has changed from that particular flow, you can then show from an AI governance also, in the sense, hey, I'm ensuring that my AI is safe because I've signed off on this particular process, and I'm also observing or monitoring if the AI systems has deviated or drifted from that particular process. So AI observability is a very strong foundation on from which you can actually ensure that your showcase compliance to multiple standards as well and the controls as well. Right. So it's just not uh, just for one standard. So this set of default technical controls, if you can deploy, can also be a foundation for your other standards as well, like your ISO 42001 or NIST RMF as well. Sure. So with that, I leave it to you, Nanjan.
Yeah, thanks, Ranju. So with that, one framework, multiple governance structures, it is also very important to look at that multiple layers, looking at how you harden the entire, LLMs and the models which are there, and also match the control for a specific AI pattern. So every AI application, the controls that you are going to deploy is different. It may not be the same as what you look at. And that's where the thought process also was put across, that every process, every AI application. So if it is a chatbot, probably I would be looking at an input filtering as a very substantially very important point, and looking at how do I filter it and look at it. And if there is a agentic involvement of it, specifically with a chatbot or any kind of an application, it can be basically a firewall or a guardrail around that particular agentic application. And likewise, larger segment of the agentic applications are now looking at the open source OSS LLM space, and how do I look at it, or looking at the sovereign AI space where people are bringing up their own models, looking at how it can basically contribute to their custom specific applications that they are being targeting upon. And that's where the secure fine tuning of the model becomes very important, because ultimately the layers which are there in the entire model maybe a legitimate layer or maybe a toxic layer. And looking at secure fine tuning of it ensures that these layers are ethically fine tuned and they respond well with respect to it from within the model itself, which is like a default guardrail with respect to that model. And obviously, when you look at large segments of AI ML models and the LLM models today, 70 to 80% of them may be compromised with their backdoors. And it may be intended and initial backdoors which may be attached as a part of the PTH or a pickle file, and which may be unaware of triggering a supply chain kind of a issue, or a supply chain kind of a tampering or a security issue, which is a very complex issue in the AI supply chain, because AI is comprised of data, model, and the application, and any one of them goes wrong, the entire application is compromised. So with looking at multiple controls, which is basically required for different types of applications, it's also very important that it's to be emphasized that AI is not perfect. So the decision making of the AI is something which is auditable and questionable. And several aspects, it also becomes very important to replay the AI decisions, what was done. And that's where the monitoring of it and having a kind of a AI instant playbook, looking at AI incidents happening in the near future, it becomes important to have monitoring of the entire AI applications with the, not just with the logs, but with the token level observability, and also the behavioral baselines from which the models have basically been looked at, looking at the performance of the model, the security of the model, and thirdly, the entire drift of the entire application and the entire AI part of it, which basically involves how the AI explainability is basically enacted upon in a technical sense and being looked at for multiple different applications. It also looks very important to look at testing and the assessment layers, which has basically been emphasized on the risk-based assessment approach. And how do we look at the risk assessment report, which basically comes out of the every testing part of it. I'm just going in a reverse order just to look at the concise way in which the post-marketing monitoring can also be done, and how the models are passed in the testing at launch. So every aspect of it is something which is crucial to the EUA Act under the Article 72 of it, which requires high-risk AI application to be constantly monitored, constantly tested, testing to be looked at a snapshot level at every point, which is involving a regulatory landscape of expecting the continuous look for the model drifts, the adversarial evolution, because there are new kind of attacks which are happening on AI every day, the upstream changes, the agentic scope, which is basically being changed, the data exposure growth, which is basically upscaling itself in terms of bringing up and putting across sensitive data like PII, PCI, PHI, and several other data into the public domain. So with that, what matters at the very core of it is the production of the evidential report, which is auditor ready report, which basically are based on the four process which we basically put across, including the complete structure of the AI system in inventory, the layers of the change logs, the backdoor scan reports, looking at whether the model is comprehended, is already a compromised model, and there is something which is which it is already susceptible for. Then having a runtime monitoring records, which is constantly logging the entire part of it, understanding the token level behaviors of these models, and as well as the applications, uh, looking at different risk scenario reports, multiple decision replay part of it, which is integrally a part of the entire process. So every report which is a part of these four stages, which we have basically looked at, becomes a very auditor ready kind of an evidence, which is important for any kind of compliance. And that's where it becomes very important to enable ourselves, to enable facilitate ourselves and educate ourselves for the AI vertical, to take up that very confidently and very at a very high level. And that's where we basically bring the EUA Act with the AI literacy, which is very, very important to be across the region, where you can go yourself and get yourself into the AI security essentials, which is a 90 minutes micro certification kind of a process. The QR code is available here. You can just have a look at it, understand how these four processes basically work. And if you look at, if you need an extended version of this, you have the Certified Security Professionals for AI, which is an ANAB accredited course on security for AI, and which you can look at in a larger context of how this is basically being designed and implemented. So from a webinar to an audit readiness, it's a very important journey because the implementation roadmap is something which is important. So which are with the tentative timelines, because this is org dependent, and it is also dependent on the kind of applications that we are looking at. So looking at a roughly around an 8-week implementation roadmap, this is what it may look like. But with the help of Claude, it may be down the line, it may be two different, maybe shrinking the timelines and cutting short to from 8 week to 4 week or 3 weeks rather. It depends on how we are trying to do it and how smart you are trying to use it again. And very importantly, what is your part to the UAI Act readiness? You can get educated yourself. The second is looking at the deployment of technical controls. How do you basically implement it? And that's where we can basically bring out our own set of AI briefing sessions, which can basically help you in understanding about the wide variety of the technical controls, which can basically be looked at. And why are these controls specific to these AI applications is something that we are looking at. And also the audit and assurance readiness is something which is a gap analysis, and as well as the entire article by article evidences which are basically being provided as a part of the UAI Act, which ensures that we are technically ready for the audit rather than any kind of a policy or a legislation kind of an aspect of it, which is basically the regulators ask. And finally, let's ensure that AI is secure, it is audit ready, it is governance ready. So let's get educated ourselves, deploy controls. Let's be audit and compliance ready for any aspect of it. So this is the way that we go forward. And thank you so much. Now the floor is open for questions. Over to you, Shoma.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Anjan. Thank you so much. Thanks, Renju. So before we jump to the questions, we do have some very interesting questions on the chat. I see Mr. Thomas Abbott, you have raised your hand. If you have raised your hand for any question, please feel free.
No,
Okay.
don't
I think
they
it
can.
was just all right.
Yeah, I
So
think
we'll take the question.
please
Yeah.
enter the questions in the Q&A option part. Right.
So Renju
Let's,
and Dr. Arjun, if you want me to go through the questions on the chat first, or should we open the floor?
sure. So I'll take the first question. So to first question is that we are using AI spend ops for token level pricing across multiple suppliers, slicing the LM spend across our business dimension, which is invaluable. But they do not capture prompts for data security reasons. So the question is that should we add another layer of AI gateway or store on-premise at application level? Well, that's a good question. So the answer to that is the entire can be split into two, right? For if you're using the AI spend ops, are you using it for a user activity like your developer or your regular user BAU activities apart? Then the answer is that you don't need to store those prompts, right? Because you are just allowing a user, your employees to use LLMs and use it for their BAU activities. But if your application is linked to it, when I say application, you have a production application like a chatbot, or you have a kind of an application which is going to take decision based on these files. So any decision which is going to be taken, or any chatbot kind of a thing, which through your application, you're going to redirect to these AI spend ops, then yes, you need an option to capture those tokens part of it, right? So it can be, you can use a cloud-based AI observability solutions, or you can have your own on-premise deployment. So a lot of these days, the cloud AI observability solutions, we also have our solution part of it, which truncates the request, right? So it's basically passes through the engine, able to identify if there is anything wrong. But during the storage, it truncates and gets stored. So that way, it adheres to these data privacy requirements as well. So to answer, if it's don't get confused if you're giving AI to your employees or users uh, for their day-to-day BAU activities. The act doesn't get applied here. The act only gets applied if you are using it within your applications part. Sure. So the second question is, uh, what does UK law currently requires, and which law is it? Or which is Robin is also asked, and also Alberto asked that how does UA Act impact the UK?
So
Anjit?
probably I would take that up. So UK as such does not have a specific regulations on AI. It was completely on the EU for looking at it. But as I said at the initial part of my session, so UK AI white paper, which was released in 2023, has a five key principle approach, which is basically a regulatory kind of an enforcement, looking at safety, transparency, fairness, accountability, and governance, and also contestability of it, which is basically looking at how AI decisions can be contested with respect to it if the challenge can be done on the decision making part of the entire process. Apart from that, UK's existing laws, which are basically there on the GDPR, which is with the UK version, and as well as the Data Protection Act of 2018, which are again on the personal data that is basically used for the AI training as such, which is for decision making rights. But holistically, when you look at the entire AI application, there is no regulation as such or act such, just like what EU is trying to look at in the UK context. But there may be sectoral specific regulations which may be restricted to finance, healthcare, or any online platforms, which may be recommended by FCA, MHRA, and several other frameworks. Nothing very specific. It is just an extract of what it is, but looking at the five key principles is where the draft basically looks at enforcing for the AI applications.
Yeah. So we have another question from Sumit. Who asked that when a supplier is providing some AI solution to a company A, which is running on the cloud outside of the purview of company A, then what areas needs to be focused to get the AI risk covered? Well, that's a good thing. Good point, question, Sumit. So, like our GDPR and any other compliance, it is important that as an organization, which is the company A, enforce or ask that particular supplier to provide evidence or showcase the certification for it. So whether it is either of them getting ISO 42001 certified, or they being audited as per the UAA Act, or let's say company A, you preparing your own audit checklist and doing that particular audit of that particular AI solution company, right? And ensuring that, hey, have they compliant with these set of controls? So it's like any other compliance. It is the responsibility of company A to ensure that either in the agreement or especially in the agreement, you include the particular clause that the AI solution provider company needs to comply with these set of standards and regulations. Right now, what we're seeing is that most of the clients are asking whether they are complying with High Trust AI Act, because in High Trust, especially in the NA region, North America region, the High Trust has come out with a set of AI requirements. So they're asking, are you complying with High Trust AI regulations? And ISO 42001 is a base kind of a control, right? So if you are in the world, in the field of AI, providing AI solutions, ISO 42001 has become like a base, like ISO 27001 for cyber part. But it's again depending the organization to position or push for that regulation requirement. Sure. The next question Chris asked is that what about low risk AI systems like AI chatbots or knowledge systems for EU clients? where do they fall under the act? Anjan?
Here, the specific question is what kind of a chatbot it is. Now, if it is a chatbot which is looking at HR screening kind of a chatbot, then it falls under a high risk category part of it. And if it is a simple one like an internal chatbot or a FAQ kind of a chatbot, then the risk level rather turns out to be a limited risk. So likewise, if it is LLM provider's chatbot or a medical advice chatbot, which is something dwelling into the privacy factor of a EU citizen, then the risk level automatically escalates to a high risk kind of a category. So as what we have discussed, the high risk applications does require a compliance of it. But as far as the limited risk is concerned or the low risk is concerned, it has been placed at the bottom of the entire pyramid of the EU AI Act, where it requires itself to be documented with the technical documentation, and certain aspects needs to be voluntarily audited and looked at certain segment of the time, but not very crucial or a mandatory as such.
Yeah. The next question is how popular is Sarful is asking is how popular is the ISO 42001 certification as evidence of compliance? Well, definitely, I can state that if you're providing any kind of an AI service, then by default, the client is expecting ISO 42001 certification, and all the others, and SOC 2 as well, especially when I'm talking from an NA region perspective. So it is becoming like a base standard, like so every organization that we need to work with has to be ISO 27001 compliant. So in case if you're providing any AI solutions, then 40001 is a kind of a base part. But how strongly it's been taken as an evidence, uh, that's a mixed answer. Uh, we've seen where clients accept it at the face value, and also we have seen clients which has sent addition or sent a requirement for an additional set of evidences to prove that the controls have been properly implemented. So it's currently a high 50-50 on the popularity or how strongly that certification is being taken. Sure. So we have another question from Robin. Is asking that is the UK planning on adopting the UA Act, or is there something similar in the pipeline? And any idea the timelines?
Sure. I think, from the time of Brexit, UK is not adapting anything from EU, and that's very clear. It's only the point that there has been a discussion for an artificial intelligence regulations bill to be tabled sometime in the mid or towards the end of 2026, but it's been just a discussion even in the King's speech as well when I looked at it long back. And nothing specific as a regulation has been so far formalized and being looked at, apart from the existing one, which is the GDPR and several others, which are basically being adopted and being used from a data perspective part of it.
Sure. So Chris has another question. How about a software product written in the UK, which a EU company deploys, which has AI features built in? For example, anonymized data summary and PDF analysis for invoice. Will UA Act applicable for that particular software company or software product?
So to answer this question, the question is straightforward. So the deployment is in the EU region. Yes, it is applicable for it. And looking at the kind of examples that you've quoted in it, which is the data summary or the PDF analysis. So the category of that automatically turns out to be a low risk application, which falls under that condition of the EU AI Act. So irrespective of that's the first point that we basically put up, which was the extraterritorial scope. So wherever you are trying to put it across, and if it is for a EU citizen, and even the provider, the importer is outside the EU region, he needs to comply with the EUA Act for it.
Sure. So we have the last question from Sumit. If is this a right approach to have a central MCP gateway in a multi-agent environment where all MCP endpoints needs to go via the MCP gateway to interact with the LLM? The answer is definitely yes, because you have a control on the MCP's part. And I could add is that also deploy an LLM guardrail also, so that you can able to monitor, and also add a observability part to observe if is any new MCP is been initiated, a new MCP client has been initiated, so that you are aware about it. You are aware about if that MCP is connecting or has any new tool been initiated aspect you can think about. And also in the new set of risks which is happening, last week there's a paper which has been released where the risk is happening on the description, right? So uh, the agent scale, so the MCP description which is being defined, the intruders are trying to uh, change or upload those particular description parts. So whether it is more like a supply chain risk, but in a description level. So which is actually uh, can impact, because it's goes like a goes a hidden kind of a attack part, which is the latest at kind of a risk scenario, which is paper was published. I think this Monday got published. So it's a good approach, but we can definitely add more set of controls with that. So with that, over to you, Shuma.
Thanks, Renju, for that. So I think that sums up our questions on the chat box. Before we move on, I think our team will be pulling up a poll. I would request all of you who is on this webinar to please kindly fill it. That'll be really helpful for us. And we're open now to any questions that you might have. Any further questions, if anyone has questions. And we also we extend, if there's any questions further on any topic here, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to address.
Sure. And if you like, we will also do an AI security briefing sessions for specific client environment. So if you feel that your organization can benefit from specific AI security briefing sessions, you can reach out to us, and we can conduct the same. And we also we have the CSPI workshop, which is an hybrid workshop. So if you're interested to get certified as a certified security professional in AI, you can register for the same. And we also have our Prism set of products. You can reach it at prism.cisco.ai, which includes your governance. It's an AI security and governance platform. So if you like to have a demo for the same, also you would like to arrange for the same as well.
So I think if there are no more further questions, then we can close the webinar today. We're open to questions at any point of time, through email, or you can reach out to any of us here. So thank you again, everyone, for your time today. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Anjali.
you.
Thank you, Renju.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.